Welcome back to Reddit Talks. Our team carefully creates and hand edits every story to help improve your mindset through storytelling. All of our content is 100% original and human-led. Enjoy the video.
During dinner, my grandfather asked about the $300,000 he gave me after graduation. I'd never seen it. My parents and sister turned white. 30 minutes later, police arrived and everything unraveled. The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor 3 seconds after my grandfather asked the question that destroyed my family. We were celebrating his 80th birthday at Rosewood Manor, the sprawling estate where I'd spent childhood summers catching fireflies and listening to his stories about building Carter Industries from nothing. 60 guests filled the candlelit dining room, relatives, business partners, old friends, all dressed in evening wear, all laughing over filet mignon and vintage wine. Classical piano drifted from hidden speakers. Everything was perfect. Then my grandfather stood up, untapped his fork against his crystal glass, and smiled at me across the table. "Ethan," he said, his voice carrying that particular warmth he reserved for moments he considered important. "I've been meaning to ask you something." I set down my fork, smiling back. "Sure, Grandpa. The $300,000 I transferred to you after graduation. How did you invest it?" The room didn't go quiet immediately. A few people kept talking. Someone laughed at a joke I didn't hear, but I felt the ground tilt beneath me, felt my brain trying to process words that made no sense. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "What, 300,000? That's when the silence hit. My grandfather's smile faded. "The joint account I opened for you and your brother, Michael. 300,000 each. I announced it at your graduation party 2 years ago. The entire family was there." My hands went numb. "Grandpa, I never received any money. I have no idea what you're talking about." Across the table, my mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers and exploded against the floor. My father's face drained of color so fast I thought he might pass out. And my brother Michael, golden boy, trust fund kid, Instagram influencer with 200,000 followers, sat frozen in his tailored Armani suit, staring at his plate like it might offer him an escape route. My grandfather's eyes moved slowly from me to them. "Is that so?" he said quietly, too quietly. "I need to backtrack for this to make sense. My name is Ethan Carter, and I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a family that looked perfect from the outside. My father, Richard Carter, he ran the Pacific Northwest division of my grandfather's commercial real estate empire. My mother, Patricia, served on charity boards and hosted fundraisers. My brother Michael was 3 years older, charismatic, athletic, the kind of guy who could charm anyone within 30 seconds of meeting them. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the kid who actually enjoyed studying architecture and urban planning instead of partying. After high school, I went to Portland State on academic scholarships, lived in a cramped studio apartment, and worked part-time at a coffee shop to cover expenses my parents claimed they couldn't afford right now. Michael, meanwhile, went to USC on my grandfather's dime, drove a BMW, and spent his weekends in Malibu posting photos that got thousands of likes. I told myself it didn't bother me, and that our parents just connected with him better, that I was fine being independent. Red flag number 1, I'd normalized being treated as an afterthought in my own family. My grandfather, William Carter, was different. He called me every Sunday, sent me books he thought I'd enjoy, asked about my thesis on sustainable housing development. When I graduated summa cum laude 2 years ago, he flew in from Seattle specifically to watch me walk across that stage. "I'm proud of you, son," he'd said, gripping my shoulder with hands roughened from decades of construction work before he'd built his empire. "You earned everything you have." There was a graduation party afterward at my parents' house. I remember feeling awkward in my department store suit while Michael worked the room in designer clothes. But I remember my grandfather making a speech about investing in the next generation. What I don't remember is anyone mentioning $300,000. Red flag number 2, major financial decisions had been made without my knowledge, and I'd never questioned why. Back in that dining room, the silence had become suffocating. My grandfather turned to my father. "Richard, explain." My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "Dad, there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" My grandfather's voice could have cut steel. "I transferred $600,000 into a joint account, $300 for each grandson. I have the bank statement. I have the transfer receipts. I announced it publicly. So tell me, where is Ethan's money?" My mother stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against hardwood. "William, this is hardly the time." "Sit down, Patricia." She sat. My grandfather pulled out his phone, the smartphone I'd taught him to use last Christmas, and began scrolling. The entire room watched, 60 people holding their breath. He turned the screen toward me. "June 15th, 2 years ago. Transfer confirmation. $300,000 to account number ending in 7834, designated for Ethan James Carter." I stared at the screen. The numbers were real. The date was real. The account number meant nothing to me. "I've never seen that account," I whispered. My grandfather's jaw tightened. He turned to Michael. "Did you receive your money?" Michael's hands were shaking. Actually shaking. shaking. Yes, but I thought, Mom said what? I demanded, finding my voice. What the hell is going on? My mother's face had gone from pale to flushed. Michael needed the funds more urgently. You were on scholarships. You were fine. And we planned to give you yours later when what? My grandfather's voice cut through her excuses like a blade. When you'd spent it all? The room erupted in whispers. My Aunt Jennifer gasped. My cousin Sarah pulled out her phone. I heard someone say, "Oh my God." My grandfather stood slowly, and everyone fell silent again. "Ethan," he said, his eyes never leaving my parents, "did you authorize anyone to access this account on your behalf?" "No, sir." "Did you sign any documents regarding it?" "I never knew it existed." He nodded once, then dialed a number on his phone. "This is William Carter, and I need to report a case of financial fraud and embezzlement." His voice was perfectly calm, perfectly clear. "The amount is $300,000. The victim is my grandson. I'm at 4827 Rosewood Drive." "Yes, I'll hold." My mother started crying, actually crying, mascara running down her face in black streaks. "William, please, we can explain." "You had 2 years to explain," he said. "You chose silence. Now you'll explain to the police." Michael shoved back from the table and stood up. "This is insane. I didn't do anything wrong." "Sit down," my grandfather said, without raising his voice. Michael sat. My father hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He just stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. I sat there trying to process what was happening. My parents had stolen $300,000 from me. Not borrowed, not delayed, stolen, and given it to my brother. The brother who drove a BMW while I took the bus. The brother who vacationed in Europe while I worked double shifts. The brother who posted photos from rooftop parties while I studied in a studio apartment with water-stained ceilings. The rage came slowly, building from my stomach until I could taste it. The police arrived 27 minutes later. Detective Maria Santos introduced herself at the door. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, 22 years with the Portland PD's Financial Crimes Unit. Her partner, Officer James Mitchell, was younger, maybe 30, with the kind of careful expression that said he'd seen this exact scenario before. My grandfather met them in the foyer and handed over his phone with the transfer records pulled up. "My grandson Ethan was designated to receive $300,000 2 years ago," he explained. "He never received it. His parents had access to the account. His brother did receive his share." Detective Santos scrolled through the phone, her expression unreadable. "And you're certain your grandson didn't authorize this? Ask him yourself." She turned to me. "Mr. Carter, did you know about this account?" "No, ma'am, not until tonight." "Did you sign any documents giving your parents or brother access to these funds?" "I've never seen any documents. I didn't know the money existed." She nodded slowly, then looked at my parents. "We'll need you both to come to the station for questioning. Voluntarily, for now." My mother's lawyer instincts kicked in. She'd worked in contract law before becoming a professional socialite. "So we're not saying anything without our attorney present." "That's your right," Detective Santos said, "but we'll still need statements tonight. We can do this the easy way or the complicated way." My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "We'll cooperate." The guests had already started leaving, quietly, quickly, the kind of exit people make when they want to gossip but not be associated with scandal. My cousin Sarah stopped on her way out and squeezed my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. If you need anything..." I nodded, unable to form words. My Aunt Jennifer was less sympathetic. "William, surely you're not going to press charges against your own son?" My grandfather's response was ice. "My own son stole from my grandson. What would you have me do?" She left without answering. Within an hour, the house had emptied except for me, but my grandfather, Michael, and the police. My parents had been taken to the station in separate cars. Detective Santos approached me with a notepad. "I need to take your full statement. Are you comfortable doing that here, or would you prefer the station?" "Here is fine." We sat in my grandfather's study, the room where he'd taught me to play chess, where we'd discussed architecture and philosophy, and what it meant to build something that lasted. Now it felt like a courtroom. "Walk me through your relationship with your parents and brother," Santos said, specifically regarding finances. I took a breath and started talking. I told her about graduating with honors, about the scholarships that covered tuition, but not living expenses, about my parents telling me they were stretched thin and couldn't help with rent. It about working 30 hours a week at a coffee shop called Ground Zero, where my manager, Rachel Torres, had let me pick up extra shifts when I was desperate. "Did your parents ever mention your grandfather's gift?" Santos asked. "Never, not once." "And your brother?" "Michael never talked about money with me. We weren't close." That was an understatement. Michael had stopped returning my calls after I graduated. We'd see each other at family events, exchange pleasantries, and that was it. I'd assumed he was busy with his influencer career, sponsored posts, brand deals, the yacht parties he constantly documented online. Now I understood why he'd avoided me. Red flag number 3. The people closest to you can look you in the eye while robbing you blind. Detective Santos closed her notepad. "I'll be honest, Mr. Carter. Cases like this are messy. Proving intent is difficult when family members have legitimate access to accounts. But your grandfather's documentation is solid, and the fact that that you were never informed is significant. What happens now? I asked. We'll interview your parents and brother separately, pull bank records, build a timeline. If we find evidence of deliberate fraud or embezzlement, we'll forward it to the district attorney. Officer Mitchell added, given the amount involved, this could be charged as a felony. Theft in the first degree in Oregon starts at $1,000. $300,000 puts this in a different category entirely. My grandfather nodded grimly. Good, I didn't sleep that night. I lay in one of the guest bedrooms at Rosewood Manor, the same room I'd stayed in as a kid, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of my own life. $300,000. That money could have paid off my student loans, could have bought me a car, could have let me start the sustainable architecture firm I'd been dreaming about instead of working as a junior draftsman at Morrison & Associates, making $42,000 a year. Meanwhile, Michael had used his share for what? Instagram clout, designer clothes, a lifestyle built entirely on money that was supposed to be split equally, and my parents had watched me struggle and said nothing. The anger shifted into something colder, something harder. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. We need to talk. Please. I deleted it. At another text. I didn't know they weren't going to give you yours. I swear. I blocked his number. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, Detective Santos had pulled 2 years of bank records. She called me on Monday afternoon while I was at work, pretending to review blueprint while my hands shook too hard to hold a pencil. We've got a clear paper trail, she said. Your mother made the withdrawal. Systematic transfers to accounts in both her and Michael's names, shopping, travel, car payments, rent for Michael's apartment in Venice Beach. She also paid off credit card debt, totaling $83,000. I closed my eyes. So, it's real. It's real. And it's prosecutable. What about my dad? He's claiming he didn't know the full extent. Says your mother handled finance. But he signed off on the account access forms, so he's still liable. Of course he was. My father had built an entire life on plausible deniability. Attorney David Brennan entered my life on Tuesday. He was my grandfather's corporate lawyer. 61 years old, Princeton Law, senior partner at Brennan and Holt. He'd handled everything from contract disputes to hostile takeovers. Now he was sitting across from me in a conference room explaining the criminal and civil implications of what my family had done. Criminally, your parents are looking at theft in the first degree, Brennan said, his voice matter-of-fact. Oregon law classifies this as a Class B felony. Potential sentence is up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. My stomach dropped. 10 years? That's the maximum. First-time offenders rarely get the full sentence, especially in white-collar cases. But given the amount and the familial relationship, the DA will push hard. This isn't a sympathetic case. What about Michael? More complicated. If we can prove he knew you weren't receiving your share, he could be charged as an accessory. But if he genuinely believed the arrangement was legitimate, Brennan shrugged. Harder to prosecute. I thought about Michael's texts. I didn't know they weren't going to give you yours. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he was just another victim of our parents' manipulation. Or maybe he was a better liar than I'd given him credit for. The civil case was clearer. You're entitled to full restitution, Brennan explained. $300,000 principal, a plus interest calculated from the date of the original transfer. We're looking at roughly $347,000 total. Can they even pay that? They'll have to. We'll seize assets if necessary. The house, cars, investment accounts, retirement funds. Your grandfather is prepared to pursue this to the fullest extent. I looked at my grandfather, who'd been sitting silently beside me through the entire meeting. Are you sure? I asked him. They're your family, too. His expression didn't soften. They stopped being my family the moment they stole from you. The arraignment happened 3 weeks later. My parents stood before Judge Catherine Reeves in Multnomah County Circuit Court, both wearing expensive suits that suddenly seemed like evidence of their crime. My mother's hair was perfectly styled. My father's tie was silk. They looked like what they were, wealthy people who'd never faced real consequences. Judge Reeves read the charges with clinical precision. Richard and Patricia Carter, you are charged with theft in the first degree, a Class B felony. How do you plead? Their attorney, Marcus Webb, a criminal defense specialist they'd hired with money I suspected was originally mine, entered not guilty pleas on both their behalf. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Park, argued for significant bail given the flight risk posed by defendants with substantial financial resources and clear willingness to engage in financial manipulation. Bail was set at $100,000 each. My grandfather attended every hearing. I sat beside him in the gallery, watching my parents' perfect facade crack a little more each time. Michael wasn't charged criminally, but that didn't save him. Within days, someone leaked the story to the press. Portland influencer's lifestyle funded by stolen inheritance ran in the Oregonian. Twitter exploded. Instagram comments on Michael's posts turned savage. How does it feel living on stolen money? Your brother was struggling while you bought designer clothes with his inheritance. Fraud. Delete your account. His sponsors dropped him immediately. The lifestyle brand, the fitness company, the watch manufacturers, all gone. His follower count plummeted from 200,000 to 93,000. $30,000 in 48 hours, then kept falling. He tried damage control and posted a tearful apology video explaining that he didn't know the full situation and was committed to making things right. The internet didn't care, neither did I. The trial was set for September, 4 months after my grandfather's birthday dinner. In the meantime, my life fractured and reformed in ways I couldn't have predicted. I moved into Rosewood Manor permanently. My grandfather insisted, and honestly, I couldn't afford my studio apartment anymore. I'd been let go from Morrison & Associates after missing too many days for court appearances and meetings with lawyers. You don't need that job, my grandfather said. You need to focus on rebuilding. He was right, but being unemployed at 24 felt like another failure in a long list. Dr. Sarah Lynn, the therapist my grandfather hired, helped me reframe that thinking. See, you're not failing, she said during our second session. You're processing trauma. Financial abuse is real abuse, even when it comes from family, especially when it comes from family. She had me keep a journal, write down every memory of being treated as lesser than Michael. Every time my parents had made me feel like my accomplishments didn't matter. Every casual cruelty disguised as a joke. The journal filled up fast. My parents tried reaching out through intermediaries. My Aunt Jennifer called. Ethan, sweetheart, surely you can see this has gone too far. Your parents made a mistake, but involving the courts, they stole $300,000. I said flatly, that's not a mistake, and that's a felony. But they're your parent. They stopped being my parent when they chose Michael over me for the 1,000th time. She hung up. My old family friends tried similar approach. Surely I could forgive. Surely I could show mercy. Surely I understood they'd just made poor choices. I understood perfectly, and I didn't care. The crisis peak came in August, 6 weeks before the trial. The prosecution offered my parents a plea deal. Plead guilty to theft in the second degree, accept 3 years of probation, pay full restitution plus fines, and avoid prison time. Attorney Brennan called me into his office to discuss it. It's not a bad deal, he admitted. They avoid incarceration. You get your money back. The case closes. The alternative is going to trial, which could take months and has no guaranteed outcome. What do you think I should do? He folded his hands on his desk. I think you should decide what justice means to you. Is it punishment, restitution, public acknowledgement? Because you can't always get all three. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I called a family meeting. We met at Brennan's office. Neutral ground. My parents, their lawyer, my grandfather, Brennan, and me. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in 4 months. My father's hands trembled when he poured water from the pitcher on the conference table. I didn't feel sorry for them. I'll accept the plea deal, I said, on 2 conditions. Marcus Webb leaned forward. What conditions? First, Michael pays back $100,000 of the $347,000 total, and he benefited directly from the theft. He should contribute to the restitution. My mother started to protest, but my father put a hand on her arm. Second, I continued, you both write me a letter, not an apology, an explanation. I want to know why. Why you chose him over me. Why you let me struggle while he lived like a trust fund kid. Why you looked me in the eye for 2 years and said nothing. Silence. Finally, my father spoke. We'll agree to the conditions. The plea hearing was brief. Judge Reeves accepted the guilty pleas, sentenced my parents to 3 years of supervised probation, and ordered full restitution within 18 months. If they failed to pay, the criminal charges would be reinstated. My mother cried. My father stared straight ahead. I felt nothing. Outside the courthouse, a small group of reporters had gathered. One shoved a microphone toward me. Mr. Carter, how do you feel about your parents avoiding prison? I feel like justice was served, I said, and I'm moving on. It made the evening news. By morning, I was a meme. Ice-cold justice guy. People debated whether I'd been too harsh or not harsh enough. I deleted social media and stopped reading the comments. The letters arrived 2 weeks later. My mother's was typed, 3 pages, full of justification. We thought Michael needed more support. You were always so independent. We planned to make it right eventually. We never meant to hurt you. I read it once and filed it away. My father's was handwritten, shorter, more honest. Ethan, I don't have a good answer for why we did this. Your mother convinced me it was temporary and that we'd fix it before you ever knew. But the truth is, I let it happen because it was easier than admitting we'd failed you. Michael was the son I understood. You were brilliant in ways that made me feel inadequate, so I gave him what I could give. Money, attention, approval, because I didn't know how to give you what you actually needed. I know that's not an excuse. I know I can't fix this. I'm sorry. Dad, I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to forgive him. Today wasn't that day. A year later, my life looked nothing like the wreckage I'd been sitting in. The restitution came through in installments. My parents sold their house, downsized to a condo, liquidated investments. Michael paid his share by selling the BMW, all auctioning off his designer wardrobe, and taking a job in marketing at a tech startup. I used the money to do exactly what I'd always wanted. I started my own firm, Carter Sustainable Design, opened in a small office in Portland's Pearl District. Just me and one junior architect at first, taking on residential projects focused on affordable, eco-friendly friendly housing. My grandfather provided the initial operating capital as a gift, not a loan. Build something that lasts, he said. I intended to. Dr. Lin helped me process the family dynamics without letting them define me. Some weeks were harder than others. Some days, I still felt the old anger rising. But slowly, I learned to separate my worth from their choices. I also learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when everything falls apart. My grandfather showed up. My cousin Sarah showed up. Rachel, my old manager from Ground Zero, showed up and became my first client when she decided to build a tiny house. Those were the people I built my new life around. I ran into Michael once, about 14 months after everything exploded. He was walking out of a Starbucks downtown, looking tired in khakis and a button-down shirt. No designer label, no photographers. Just a regular guy carrying a regular coffee. We stopped on the sidewalk, both of us caught off guard. "Ethan," he said quietly. Hey, awkward silence. I heard about your firm. Congratulations. Thanks. I really am sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." I studied his face, looking for the charismatic influencer I'd resented for so long. He wasn't there anymore, just my brother, but looking exhausted and sincere. "I believe you," I said finally. His shoulders sagged with relief. "I don't forgive you yet," I added, "but maybe someday." He nodded. "That's fair." We stood there another moment, then went our separate ways. I didn't look back. On the 2-year anniversary of the dinner that changed everything, my grandfather invited me to Rosewood Manor for a quiet meal. We ate pasta and drank wine and talked about my latest project, a development of 20 affordable housing units designed with sustainable materials and energy-efficient systems. "Your father called me last week," my grandfather mentioned casually, asked if I'd consider restoring him to the will. I set down my fork. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the will was rewritten the day after his arraignment. Everything goes to you and the Carter Foundation for Urban Housing. That won't change." "How did he take it?" "Poorly." My grandfather smiled without humor. "But that's not your problem." He was right. It wasn't. We finished dinner and moved to the study. My grandfather poured scotch, the good stuff, aged 25 years, and handed me a glass. "To truth," he said, raising his drink. "To truth," I echoed. We drank in comfortable silence. Later, standing on the terrace overlooking the estate, I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. The family that betrayed me, the grandfather who'd fought for me, the career I'd built from ashes, the person I'd become in the aftermath. I thought about the kid who'd worked double shifts and taken the bus and never questioned why his own family treated him like he didn't matter. But that kid was gone. In his place stood someone who knew his worth, who demanded honesty, who walked away from people who couldn't give it. The truth had cost me my family, but it had given me something more important, myself. If you made it this far, here's what I learned. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will fail you in unimaginable ways, and when they do, you get to choose what comes next. You can drown in the betrayal, or you can build something better from the ruins. I chose the second option, and I'd make that choice again every single time.